Smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure, but at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity.
I've never seen anybody act like that on pot ever. How many times? I mean, how times have changed. In the late 1930s, films like Reefer Madness portrayed marijuana users as psychos, helping enforce a strict prohibition that still exists now. 75 years later, a majority of Americans now favor legalization. That has never happened before. The latest poll by Pew Research shows 52% of those surveyed support the idea. It's most evident in this map. 17 states and the District of Columbia now allow medical marijuana. Washington and Colorado permit recreational use, and marijuana has been decriminalized in 6 other states. Prohibition is also expensive. In a 2005 Harvard study found state and local governments spend $5.3 billion a year to enforce marijuana laws. Federal government spends another $2.4 billion. For a total of $7.7 billion each year. That is a whole lot of money. I want to bring back our legal analyst here at CNN, Mr. Paul Callan, Leonard Freeling, the executive director of NORML in Colorado. Did I say your last name properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have to tell you, when we started talking about this story, I said, this feels so 5 years ago. This feels like an old story, except that I guess the polls are just now showing it. I mean, Leonard or Lenny, does this surprise you? It doesn't surprise most people, especially younger people, that most people say, hey, go ahead and decriminalize it or legalize it or regulate it at least.
The genie's out of the bottle. The genie is not going back in the bottle. We have declared peace. This war is over. Our job now is to minimize the casualties now that we have peace, because there still will be more casualties, and we have the opportunity for 50 different states to have 50 different experiments in the spirit of the great experiment that is our United States. And as part of the education mission of Colorado NORML, of NORML, and of LEAP, and of many other organizations, part of the education mission is to see that those experiments happen responsibly.
So what has changed, Lenny? What has changed in the last 25 years?
I was thinking about that, and I think the real question might be, why during the last 100 years are we messing around with marijuana as opposed to the previous 5,000 years, where the last 25 is more or less insignificant in the big picture? Now, the answer to your question is, for all those years and the years before it, scientifically, the pro-marijuana people were generally correct. That didn't win the peace. What won the peace was the economics. People realized that in triaging our economics and prioritizing, marijuana was, whether people liked it, disliked it, whatever it was, they knew it wasn't so bad that it took priority, say, over feeding people. They realized, I think, that it would take...
Yep, I understand where you're going. I want to bring Paul in here because, Paul, Lenny lives in a state that has made pot legal, and that may be a window to what it would look like, you know, if pot were legal nationwide. States like that, how do you think that'll serve to either have marijuana legalized nationwide or not?
Well, you know, Lenny's... well, you know, I have to agree with Lenny. I mean, federalism will allow the states to experiment with this, and we can see how it works out. But I do have to say, on the issue of why we are where we are today, think Woodstock. You know, the Woodstock generation is now ruling this country. Actually, people my age who were, you know, not me, of course, Don, but other people in college were smoking the stuff back in the 70s, and they're now running the government. So it doesn't surprise me that we're being a little bit friendlier to it. But let's look at the rest of the world before we jump into this. I was looking today at the statistics about how many countries have legalized marijuana. One of the things that really shocked me is that one of about 5 countries that have absolute legalization, North Korea, which may explain a lot about what's going on over there right now with Kim Jong-un. I don't really know, but they are one of 5 countries that actually have legalized marijuana. And it also says, of course, we don't have a big track record worldwide about what happens when you legalize it. I understand that, at least on the surface, it looks like it's not as harmful as alcohol, and alcohol's been horribly destructive. But on the other hand, we've got no big track record as to what happens. Do people start smoking it who wouldn't have smoked it normally? You know, do people in their 50s and 60s who probably haven't used it in a lot of years, do they say, well, let me get down to the 7-Eleven and pick up, you know, a bag of weed and come home and start smoking? And are they less productive at work then? Is that going to cost the government money? I mean, there are a lot of imponderables here.
Probably
do they go on television and sound like they're out of it when they're giving answers to questions? I mean, it could change the media.
I think Leonard, is he talking? Are you talking about Leonard here?
I'm not talking about Leonard.
Kidding.
I would never say such a thing about Leonard.
I'm just kidding. Listen, nearly one in 2 now say that they have smoked pot. Even those who don't like it say enforcing the laws is not worth the cost, and legalization is the answer. Now, listen, neither of us is a medical doctor here. There are people who say it's a gateway drug. And then on the other side, there are people who say it is not a gateway drug, and it's actually good for you, and it's for cancer and glaucoma and all of those things, and it eases pain. But why do you think that most people say, hey, I've tried it, and you know what? Legalization is the cost of fighting against or enforcing laws. It's not even worth it. You should just legalize it, Paul.
Well, I think, you know, you're dealing not so much with an issue that we're going to find hard science on. You're dealing with a moral issue. A lot of people think, you know, you just shouldn't give access to everybody to easy use of drugs like marijuana. We have enough problems with alcohol. Do we really need to make it easy for kids, and for instance, for adolescents, to get involved in smoking marijuana and using the drug? Will they be less productive in the long run as a result of it? And I think a lot of people have that hesitation about really going that last step and legalizing, as Colorado has done. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in Colorado. I was out there snowboarding recently, and I thought I was in danger on a couple of the slopes because of the I mean, I don't know if people are smoking while they ski now, which could be dangerous, Lenny, in Colorado, I'm sure.
Well, Lenny, I'm going to ask you that question. Since, you know, now it's legal there, has your state gone to pot? What's happened?
Interestingly, my wife, who is a complete non-smoker, and I were discussing whether either of us could think of this is anecdotal, I understand, whether either of us could think of a single individual who, since we legalized, the governor signed off on the election January 4th of this year, a single person who has, as far as we know, tried marijuana now that it is legal. Neither of us could think of a single person. You keep focusing on the last 25 or the last 100 years and lack of experience, and while that's of course true, and while frankly the last thing I want to do is get into a debate with Mr. Callan, I'm far too wise to that, and he's far too good. But we do have 5,000 years experience, not just the 50 or 100 where it's been an issue in the United States. We have countries from Israel to Spain looking at the medical aspects. And as far as hard science, right now, PubMed, I believe we're up to 23,000 studies, including double-blind placebo experiments. Do we know enough? No.
Yeah.
Do we know a lot?
Yeah, we'll be learning a lot more, I'm sure, as this continues to progress. Paul, Lenny, thank you. See, no arguing. We're not debating here. We're just talking. Thank you.
We're not debating. We're having a very mellow discussion. And Lenny, it's always a pleasure getting to talk to you.
See that?
A true honor. Thank you.
See what marijuana does? It mellows everybody out. Just talking about it.